So as Gary mentioned, my name is Mark Hartnett. I'm one of the AM research engineers here in Irish Manufacturing Research. And today I'm going to be talking to you all about some of the work we've completed evaluating a range of additive manufacturing specific post-processing technologies and applying these specifically with a view to the medical device sector. This work is carried out under the SMART Eureka project APEM AM, which focused on improving metal additive manufacturing efficiency, and was carried out in partnership with Crew and Precision Medical, ATA Group, iForm, Createch Medical, eGile, and Lortech, spread across Ireland and Spain. Why do we need post-processing in AM, I think is the first question. As much as we all wish it was, additive manufacturing is not yet a Star Wars replicator, and various stages of post-processing are necessary to achieve our final part requirements. This ranges from support removal, removing the scaffolding-like structures which hold our parts to the build plate, heat treatments for stress relieving or annealing cycles to improve the mechanical properties of our components, and the focus of today's presentation, surface finishing. So to improve the surface finish of our component, either for aesthetic or functional requirements, or commonly a combination of both. This is usually carried out using a variety of processes. Shot peening, chemical etching, or manual polishing are usually required here. But what's the big problem? Well, this is all manual and this is all expensive. Typically, post-processing of metal components accounts for over 30% of the total cost of parts being manufactured. That includes your material cost, your machine amortization, your health and safety costs. So it is critical to improve the cost effectiveness of AM. We need to reduce the cost of post-processing. To do this, we've identified 4 industry-leading technologies. The first, the DLyte, is a dry electrochemical process which uses an electrolyte material encapsulated within polymer spheres to provide a electrochemical polishing process without exposure to dangerous acids. Secondly, we have the Rena hertization process, a more conventional wet electrochemical process which is specialized for its use in additive manufacturing. This is the special trick of not only being able to reduce the surface roughness of a component, but also remove support structures. Onto our abrasive technology, we've got the Rosler centrifugal disc finishing, which uses a combination of ceramic and polymer abrading material to reduce surface roughness. And finally, the post-process technologies, thermal atomized fusillade process, which is a specialized and automated wet blasting process for the reduction of surface roughness on metal AM components. So to evaluate these components, we had to design the test coupon, and within this, we wanted to replicate as many features seen in the medical device sector as possible. So with this, we've included lattice structures such as those found on osseointegrative devices like spinal cages, a variety of upskin and downskin faces at various angles, such as those seen on acetabular cups, but are found across nearly all samples manufactured using AM. We've also got some thin walls and organic faces, such as those required for the manufacture of a cranial plate. And alongside this, we've got some more basic features that are seen across all industry. Blind holes, through holes, some fine pins, and sharp corners. And these are all included to ensure we can evaluate what designs are suitable for what technologies and what the limitations are present for each of these technologies. So before we kick into the results of our study, I want to quickly explain what surface roughness is and why it is such a problem for metal additive manufacturing. If we take the example of one of the angled faces on our coupons, if we want to manufacture this using additive manufacturing, we would need to produce a wedge-like shape shown here in red. When we use CAD, this would have a perfectly flat face and be exactly the shape that we wanted. But unfortunately, when we work with additive manufacturing, we use a layered approach. This means that the CAD structure is sliced and a staircase-like structure is applied, which approximates the CAD geometry. Now, because these layers are only between 30 and 90 microns high, this staircase effect appears as a surface roughness. Alongside this surface roughness, we have additional particles, or for lack of a better term, blobs of material becoming adhered to the surface. And this can be from surrounding metal powder becoming partially adhered, or due to inconsistencies in the melt pool process. All in all, this results in a complex surface with several sources of roughness occurring in several different surface roughness formation mechanisms. With that in mind, we can look at this on our as-built component. You can see from the microscopy images on the left-hand side just how clear and evident the staircase-like effect is. You can see highlighted there the repeating structure shown by the purple bars. You can see it consistent across the surface. However, you can see highlighted in the green circles as well some of those larger metal, again, blobs being formed and some smaller areas of partially adhered particles. So again, you can see this very complex surface which has been formed. With an understanding of how surface roughness is formed on AM components, we can start to look at and see how our various technologies performed. The first is the DLyte process, again, a dry electrochemical process which uses polymer spheres as the electrolyte material and removes material by applying an alternating electrical charge, which removes material in the form of metal ions. From the images, it is clear that the brightness of the surface has been improved. We can also see that all of the fine features have been preserved. However, you can see some of these metal particles have become entrapped within the lattice structure, and this may present a significant challenge for cleaning of the part in the future. Looking under the microscopy images, you can see that the texture as a result of the staircasing has been reduced significantly. However, it is still visible. Similarly, some of the larger metal blobs highlighted here with the green circle are still present, but they have been reduced significantly. And you can see the significant increase in the brightness of the structure here as well. So a more aggressive process, which is operating for a longer time period, might be necessary here and is under investigation at the minute. With the Rena process, this is a similarly, this is an electrochemical process, but this is a wet electrochemical process. So again, we're using a acid material, a liquid acid as our electrolyte here. So again, looking at the images of this whole test coupon, we can again see a very significant increase in brightness. And highlighted here in the red circles, we noted a significant increase in the sharpness of the corners. We were able to get extremely well preserved features here. And again, all of the fine features, both the pins, the lattice structure and the test were preserved on samples which were evaluated for polishing. On some samples where we look to support structure removal, these are removed, but I'll discuss these next. Looking at the microscopy images of this, we can see that the overall profile of the surface roughness and the texture is similar and maintained. That staircasing effect is still there. But what we've noted is a cleaner surface was presented with less partially adhered particles. And again, for lack of a better word, less metal blobs becoming adhered to the surface. This is all expected as wet electrochemical processes typically remove material evenly across the surface. The trick up the sleeve of the Rena process, however, is its ability to remove support structures chemically. Now, within this process, the support structures are designed so that they are more fragile and have thinner walls than the overall structure that you are post-processing. And with this, that allows them to be preferentially removed by the electrochemical process. You can see on sample 1 on the left-hand side, these were fully removed. On sample 2 in the middle, these were only partially removed. Now, it is important to note that the rest of your component will also be etched at the same time. This is shown by the destruction of our lattice structure. So it is very important when applying a process such as this that is correctly designed for. But it's extremely interesting to see that there is potential for the removal of support structures and the surface finishing of a component within the one test piece. Moving on to our abrasive technologies, we look at the Rosler centrifugal disc finishing. Again, this uses a combination of ceramic and polymer stones to abrade and polish the surface. With this, it's a very aggressive process, and you can see this being presented in the rounding of a lot of the corners, again highlighted by the red circles. We also saw destruction of some of our finer samples, such as the 0.5 and 0.75 millimeter struts. However, when we look at the microscopy images, we can see a significant reduction in the surface roughness. And again, this is preferential as the peaks of the roughness will be removed, as these will make contact with the abrasive material first. so it will act to flatten down the overall surface. So again, we see a significant increase in the overall surface roughness and surface texture formed here with this process. And finally, if we look at the post-process technology system, this was the best performing system that we evaluated within this study. You can see here that we achieve a very uniform satin-like finish across the entire process through this automated wet blasting system. Again, we saw minimal damage to the surface, only a slight rounding of corners. Again, a very uniform texture and surface finish across the entire part. If we look at the microscopy images, we can see that the surface texture has all but been removed. It's only looking at the color displacement map below where we can see a slight waviness of the texture being observed. Additionally, as I stated, almost all of the sharp edges from that staircase-like structure have been completely removed, and it presents with a very impressive surface finish. If we get into the details of the study now, we can see the RA values of one of the many features which was tested in this study. On the left, we have our electrochemical processes, while on the right, we have our abrasive. As you can see, the electrochemical has a more significant spread, and this is owed to the fact that it can be popular and better suited as a secondary process in combination with our abrasive processes on the left. However, with our abrasive processes, you can see that we're consistently able to achieve below 10 microns, which is a reduction from 20 to 25 microns with our as-built samples, and with post-processing technologies, bringing that down to approximately 5 microns overall. It's important to note these processes are likely best used in combination, so our next studies will be the application of the DLyte system in combination with an abrasive process to see our best results. So to summarize some of the results of our study, AM surface roughness is extremely complex, and as a result of this, there is no single post-processing technology which will do it all and will work for all processes. In order to reduce your requirements of post-processing, optimization of your initial manufacturing process, your initial AM process is key, and then applying the correct post-processing technology based on your final part requirements is also fundamental to this. This is a brief snapshot of some of the work we're carrying out. If this is of interest to you and your group, please do not hesitate to reach out to us. That is the backbone of some future work we'll be conducting. You can reach me on mark.hartnett@IMR.
Thank you, Mark. We'll bring Mark back in. We do have a couple of questions that we should have a bit of time to get through. So I'm going to start with you, Mark. And Barry has asked, are you following the work of ISO TC261 and the standard ISO ASTM CD 52908, additive manufacturing of metals, finished parts properties, post-processing inspection, and testing of parts produced by powder bed fusion?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, and it's important because it wasn't something we got to cover today. The use of ISO standards and the newly developed ISO standards by TC261, that's the technical committee focusing on AM in general, has been fundamental to the design of that test coupon and the design of our test methods. So absolutely, it's a lot of features on our test coupon are based on 52902, which is another standard developed by that group. And yes, we are following the work, and it's something I would really encourage anyone on this webinar who's involved in any way in additive manufacturing. Please make sure you're involved in that technical committee and stay abreast of the rapidly developing standards in the area. But short answer is yes, we are using those standards, and they guide any of our evaluation of components today, because there's a lot of variation between different companies who aren't using those standards today, and we're trying to avoid that.
Thank you. And Mark, again, David has asked, do you have the information regarding the post-processing cycle time intensity for each type and how this relates to the effectiveness?
Yeah, absolutely. So of the processes today, most range between 40 minutes to 4 hours, depending on the technology. And it's something we'll be developing in a white paper, which we can disseminate in the future. The final goal of this is to directly link time and cost to the surface roughness. A goal of that being we can evaluate, a cost per RA or a cost per surface roughness value. But definitely we do have some of that information. It's a bit too detailed to go through today, but we're trying to break it down into a cost metric So David, if you want to reach out to me directly, we might be able to go through that in a bit more detail.